Daily cyber briefing. Today is Tuesday the 10th of October. It's 8:30 in the morning and my name's Rich Benfield, currently standing in for Stephen Ridgway. So headlines today. Security patch for 2 new flaws in curl library arriving on October the 11th. Citrix devices under attack. Netscaler flaw exploited to capture user credentials. Peachpit, massive ad fraud botnet powered by millions of hacked Android and iOS. Over 17,000 WordPress sites hacked in Balada injector attacks last month. GNOME Linux systems exposed to RCE attacks via file downloads. And D-Link Wi-Fi range extender vulnerable to command injection attacks. So, security patch for 2 new flaws in curl library arriving tomorrow. The maintainers of the curl library have released an advisory warning of 2 security vulnerabilities that are expected to be addressed as part of a forthcoming update set for release on October the 11th, 2023. That's tomorrow. This includes a high severity and a low severity flaw tracked under the identifiers CVE 2023, 38545 and 38546 respectively. Additional details about the issues and the exact version ranges impacted have been withheld owing to the possibility that the information could be used to help identify the problem area with a very high accuracy. That said, the last several years of versions of the library are said to be affected. Sure, there is a minuscule risk that someone can find this before we ship the patch, but this issue has stayed undetected for years for a reason, Daniel Stenberg, the lead developer behind the project, said in a message posted on GitHub. So, with specific version ranges details undisclosed to prevent pre-release problem identification, the vulnerabilities will be fixed in curl version 8.4.0, okay, said a spokesperson from Qualys. Organizations should urgently inventory and scan all systems utilizing curl and libcurl, anticipating identifying potentially vulnerable versions once details are disclosed with the release of curl 8.4.0 on October the 11th. Other news sources have said this is the worst vulnerability that they've ever seen for curl. So my advice, obviously, is to get that information as soon as the advisory is released and patch accordingly. So next up, Citrix devices under attack. Netscaler flaw exploited to capture user credentials. So a recently disclosed critical flaw in Citrix Netscaler ADC and gateway devices is being exploited by threat actors to conduct a credential harvesting campaign. IBM X-Force, which uncovered the activity last month, said adversaries exploited CVE 2023-3519 to attack unpatched Netscaler gateways to insert a malicious script into the HTML content of the authentication web page to capture user credentials. So CVE 3519 from this year has a CVSS score of 9.8 and was addressed by Citrix in July 2023. It's a critical code injection vulnerability that could lead to unauthenticated remote code execution. Over the past few months, it has been heavily exploited to infiltrate vulnerable devices and gain persistent access for follow-on attacks. In the latest attack chain discovered by IBM's X-Force, the operators sent a specifically crafted web request to trigger the exploitation of CVE 3519 and to deploy a PHP-based web shell. The access afforded by the web shell is subsequently leveraged to append custom code to the Netscaler gateway login page that references a remote JavaScript file hosted on attacker-controlled infrastructure. The JavaScript code is designed to collect the form data containing the username and password information supplied by the user and transmit it to a remote server through an HTTP post method upon authentication. The company said it identified at least 600 unique victim IP addresses hosting modified Netscaler gateway login pages, a majority of them located in the US and Europe. The attacks are said to be opportunistic in nature owing to the fact that the additions appear more than once. It's not exactly clear when the campaign started, but the earliest login page modification is on August 11th, 2023, indicating that it's been underway for nearly 2 months and it's not been attributed to any known threat actor or group. More details on this will be in the links provided after the end of this briefing. Next, Peachpit, a massive ad fraud botnet powered by millions of hacked Android and iOS. An ad fraud botnet dubbed Peachpit leveraged an army of hundreds of thousands of Android and iOS devices to generate illicit profits for the threat actors behind the scheme. The botnet is part of a larger China-based operation codenamed Badbox, which also entails selling off-brand mobile and connected TV devices on popular online retailers and resale sites that are backdoored with an Android malware strain called Triada. So we've talked about this in previous daily cyber briefings. General advice is to pay for the TV you use. Do not buy an off-brand streaming or smart TV, because there are supply chain issues in which infected firmware with malware ends up on these boxes. The Peachpit botnet's conglomerate of associated apps were found in 227 countries and territories, with an estimated peak of 121,000 devices a day on Android and 159,000 devices a day on iOS. The infections are said to have been realized through a collection of 39 apps that were installed more than 15 million times. Devices fitted with the Badbox malware allowed the operators to steal sensitive data, create residential proxy exit peers, and commit ad fraud through the bogus apps. Next, over 17,000 WordPress sites hacked in Balada, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, injector attacks last month. So, multiple Balada injector campaigns have compromised and infected over 17,000 WordPress sites using known flaws in premium theme plugins. Balada Injector is a massive operation discovered in December 2022 by Dr. Web, which has been leveraging various exploits for known WordPress plugin and theme flaws to inject a Linux backdoor. The backdoor redirects visitors of the compromised websites to fake tech support pages, fraudulent lottery wins, and push notification scams. So it's either part of scam campaigns or a service sold to scammers. In April 2023, Sucuri reported that the Balada Injector has been active since 2017 and estimated that it compromised nearly 1 million WordPress sites. There's a current campaign. The threat actors leverage a CVE 2023-3169 cross-site scripting flaw in the TagDiv Composer, a companion tool for TagDiv's newspaper and Newsmag themes for WordPress sites. According to Public Envato market stats, newspaper has 137,000 sales and Newsmag over 18,500. So the attack surface is 155,500 websites, not accounting for pirated copies. The two are premium paid themes, often used by thriving online platforms that maintain healthy operations and garner significant traffic. The latest campaign targeting CVE 2023-3169 started in mid-September, shortly after the disclosure of the vulnerability details and a proof of concept exploit was released. These attacks align with a campaign shared with Bleeping Computer in late September, when admins reported on Reddit that numerous WordPress sites were infected with a malicious plugin called wp-zexit.php. So, check if you've got those plugins, replace them if you need to, or maybe just deactivate them temporarily and get yourself patched. Next, GNOME Linux systems exposed to RCE attacks via file downloads. There's a memory corruption vulnerability in the open source libq library that can let attackers execute arbitrary code on Linux systems running the GNOME desktop environment. libq, a library designed for parsing Q sheet files, is integrated into the tracker file metadata indexer, which is included by default in the latest GNOME versions. Q sheets, or Q files, are plain text files containing the layout of audio tracks on a CD, such as length, name of song and musician, and are typically paired with the FLAC audio file format. GNOME is a widely used desktop environment across various Linux distributions such as Debian, Ubuntu, Fedora, Red Hat Enterprise, and SUSE Linux. Attackers can successfully exploit the flaw in question, which is CVE 2023-43641, to execute malicious code by taking advantage of tracker miners automatically indexing all downloaded files to update the search index on GNOME Linux devices. Due to the way that it's used by tracker miners, this vulnerability in libq became a one-click RCE. If you use GNOME, please update today, said GitHub security researcher Kevin Backhouse, who found the bug. So, in short, just get yourself patched and updated. Same advice as usual. And don't inadvertently click on malicious links, because that's all it takes for an attacker to exploit this CVE and get code execution on your computer. And finally, D-Link Wi-Fi range extender vulnerable to command injection attacks. So the popular D-Link DAP X1860 Wi-Fi 6 range extender is susceptible to a vulnerability allowing denial of service attacks and remote command injection. The product is currently listed as available on D-Link's site and has thousands of reviews on Amazon, so it's a popular choice amongst consumers. A team of German researchers who discovered the vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2023-45208, report that despite their attempts to alert D-Link multiple times, the vendor has remained silent and no fixes have been released. So if you are running the D-Link DAP X1860 Wi-Fi box, please note that there is not a patch for this. Vulnerability details. Okay, so the problem lies in the network scanning functionality of the DAP X1860, specifically the inability to pass SSIDs containing a single tick in the name, misinterpreting it as a command terminator. Technically, the problem originates from the passing XML STA survey function in the libcgifunc.so library, which contains a system command for execution. However, given the product's lack of SSID sanitation, an attacker can easily abuse this feature for malicious purposes. An attacker within the extender's range can set up a Wi-Fi network, deceptively name it similar to something the target is familiar with, but include an apostrophe in the name like Olaf's network, for example. When a device attempts to connect to that SSID, it will produce an error 500 internal server error, failing to operate normally. If the attacker adds a second section to the SSID that contains a shell command separated by two ampersands, like test ampersand uname, the extender will be tricked to execute the uname-a command upon setup and network scan. All processes on the extender, include any commands injected by external threat actors, are run with root privileges, potentially allowing the attackers to probe other devices connected to the extender and further the network infiltration. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there is no patch for this. So obviously you need to be careful with not only your own Wi-Fi SSIDs, but also look to understand what other Wi-Fi networks are around you, and any that have an apostrophe in the name you should be wary of. Right, so that is your daily cyber briefing for today. Thank you ever so much for listening to my random wafflings. Again, today is Tuesday, 10th of October. We are now 8:42. I was your host, Rich Banfield. Tomorrow, normal business will be resumed with Stan Ridgway taking over the helm. Thanks very much for listening. Have a good day.